Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of The Crazy World with Diane. This video is a short video in relation to the 13th year anniversary of Whitney Houston's passing. So I do content like this all the time where I talk about people who have recently passed or tributes to people that have passed away in recent years. If you like any of the content that I do, if you could do me a favour, if you could press that subscribe button, press that like button. Please feel free to put any comments in. I will always get back to every comment and let's have a conversation. Like I mentioned, this video is about Whitney Houston. I'm going to talk about a little bit about her early life, her main albums, and a little bit of her filmography. So where do I start with Whitney Houston? So I've got a question for you. Is Whitney Houston the greatest female musical artist of all time? Her numbers probably back up and say that she's certainly up there, but we're going to go into that shortly. So Whitney Houston was born on August the 9th, 1963. And like I mentioned in the video, she sadly passed away on February the 11th, 2012. Now with Whitney Houston, there's so much to talk about. Let's first of all summarize her greatness in terms of what she has accomplished as an artist. So she sold over 240 million records. As of 2023, Rolling Stones had her second in the list of 200 greatest singers. I mean, the list goes on and on, but let's talk about Whitney Houston. She was born to Emily Sissy and John Russell Houston. Now Sissy in her own right was a gospel singer, and she was with a group called the Drinkard Singers. Now I must admit, leading up to this video, I didn't know a lot about this group, but they had a couple of firsts, and I'm going to talk about a number of firsts during this video. So they were the first gospel group to perform at Carnegie Hall in Manhattan, and they were also the first gospel group to perform at the Newport Jazz Festival. Now Whitney Houston had the nickname Nippy, which was given to her by her father. And if you didn't know, Whitney Houston is the cousin of Dionne Warwick, and you all know Dionne Warwick as she has the song Walk On By, which is a very good song by the way. So Whitney Houston, when it came to singing, she first joined her mother's band as a background singer. And it weren't until 1978 in the Manhattan Town Hall where she gave a performance of Tomorrow from the film Annie, or from the musical Annie. I say the film because I remember it growing up as a kid. Now this was the first time she received a standing ovation, and I think it was clear from that point that Whitney Houston could sing. So like I said, I'm not really going to touch on her early life. So in 1980 she was involved in fashion modelling. Now she was one of the first black models to appear on the cover of 17. It didn't just stop with 17, she also appeared in Cosmopolitan, Glamour, and Young Miss. So now we're going to fast forward 3 years and we're going to go to 1983. Whitney Houston signs a contract with Arista Records. It took a little while for her to get her first album, but in the meantime she was still doing her modelling. And also in terms of music, she had a couple of duets. So one of the main ones that she had was in 1984, she had a duet with Teddy Pendergrass. And that was the song called Hold Me, which was on his album Love Language. Do you remember it? And this song was actually her first top 10 song on the R&B adult contemporary charts. In 1984, she also had a duet with Jermaine Jackson. And the song was called Take Good Care of My Heart, if you remember it. I don't remember it myself actually, so I had to listen to it and then it sort of rang a bell. So the 14th of February, it's a day that a lot of people know as Valentine's Day, or you may know it for various other reasons. But on the 14th of February 1985, Whitney Houston released her first album, Whitney Houston. Now it had a slow start, but by week 50 it had reached #1. So that was in March 1986. Now it stayed at #1 for 14 weeks, which was a record. And remember what I said earlier in this video, I'm going to talk about a lot of firsts. So this album was a masterpiece, and I'm going to talk about some of the songs a bit later in this video. I'm going to give you my top 5 Whitney Houston songs as well. So I'll be curious to see if you agree with my selection. But this album had some great tracks, so let's go into it. So you had the first single from this album, You Give Good Love. That was the first single that was released, and it was followed up by 2 great songs. So you had Saving All My Love For You, which was the second single, and this was the song that gave Whitney Houston her first Grammy. It also reached #1 on the Billboard Top 100. It was then followed up with another good song, How Will I Know? Very good song. And then the last song, which came out, the 4th single from this album, was The Greatest Love of All. Arguably Whitney Houston's most famous song, but again I'm going to talk about this song, and I've got a little bit of a story actually with this, a personal story that I'm going to share with you because that's the sort of guy I am. Now remember, I'm going to say it a number of times, there's a number of firsts with Whitney Houston. So this album set a record, so she was the first female to have 3 #1s from the same album. This album went diamond. It sold 40 million in the US alone and over 25 million worldwide. And remember, this was a time when there was no social media, there was no streaming, it was all physical record sales. It's the best-selling debut album in music history, and it remains the best-selling debut album by a female. You think about some of the females such as Madonna, females such as Beyonce, Katy Perry, Taylor Swift. She still holds the record. Now, on the back of the success of this album, clearly she was going to do a world tour. So in 1986, she had her first world tour, which was called the Greatest Love World Tour. Now, there were 53 dates on this world tour. 53 dates. How amazing is that? Honestly, this album was a masterpiece. It's on the 500 greatest albums by the Rolling Stones. Clearly, it has to be. It's also in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, definitive 200 list. So that was her first album. So let's talk about her second album, 1987, Whitney. Now, another first. Whitney Houston became the first female to debut at #1 on the Billboard 200. She was the first woman to enter at #1 simultaneously in both the US and the UK. She also reached #1 in every other country where it charted. Think about that for a second. #1 simultaneously UK, in the US, and #1 in every single other country where it charted. That is amazing. Now let's talk about the singles from the album. I mentioned one of her most famous songs, The Greatest Love of All, from the previous album, but there might be one on this album which is equally as famous. So you got the first track, I Wanna Dance With Somebody. How popular was this song? How good was this song? Didn't We Almost Have It was the second single that was released. And then the single number 3, So Emotional, and number 4 was Where Do Broken Hearts Go. So I've got some more firsts for you, and I know you were looking forward to this. So she was the first female artist to have 4 #1 singles from an album, beating her own record from the first album. The first artist to score 7 #1 consecutive hits. Not female, talking about artist full stop. Beating the record, which was 6, held by the Beatles and the Bee Gees. And up to now, 2025, she's the only artist to achieve this. This album sold 20 million worldwide, and she won her second Grammy with I Wanna Dance With Somebody. Now, on the success of this album, she had her second tour, which was the Moment of Truth World Tour. If you think 53 dates for the previous tour was a lot, this tour had 150 dates. And 8 of these were in Wembley, so this is quite poignant to me as I come from the UK and Wembley isn't too far down the road. In 1987, Forbes had her as the 8th highest ranking entertainer on their list. Things just went from strength to strength. She performed again at Wembley for Nelson Mandela's 70th birthday tribute, and then in 1988 she released a song for the Olympics. Do you remember the song One Moment in Time? This was an excellent song. Love the video, and the video it's like a montage of different clips from various different Olympics and sporting events. She also performed at Super Bowl 25, but there was a little bit of controversy because she had actually pre-recorded her singing. However, her version of the Star Spangled Banner is one of the most iconic, and I think it's been used various times since for various different reasons. Now, in 1992, she transitioned to acting. Now, leading up to her first role, she was actually offered roles. She was actually offered to act with people like Robert De Niro, Quincy Jones, and Spike Lee, but she turned them down. In 1992, she starred in The Bodyguard. Now, you remember The Bodyguard with Kevin Costner, who was quite a big star at the time. Now, the film was a success, but the soundtrack for the film was probably even bigger. Now, it had some good songs. So first of all, you had the main song, I Will Always Love You. And I would argue, is this her most popular song? Is this her best song? Now, this single became her first diamond single, and only 3 other female artists have achieved this feat. So that's Mariah Carey, Katy Perry, and Taylor Swift. Now, I Will Always Love You was a cover of the original, which was done by Dolly Parton, and it is the best-selling single by a female solo artist. It won the Grammy Record of the Year, and it was #1 for 20 weeks on the Billboard 200. Now, there were other singles from this soundtrack and some very good songs, so check this out. I'm Every Woman was also from this album, and I Have Nothing was also from this album. 2 excellent songs. Now, this led on to another world tour, the Bodyguard World Tour, which again was a massive success. She then starred in 1995 in Waiting to Exhale. So you had My Love Is Your Love, which was a really, really good song. And then she also had It's Not Right But It's Okay, which was a very popular song. So there's so much more I could say about Whitney Houston, and like everybody, you've got the positives and you've got the negatives. So I'm not, this is a tribute to Whitney Houston, so I'm not going to dwell on the negatives. So I'm just going to talk about her personal life. So we know that she was married to Bobby Brown. So they married on July the 18th, 1992. They had one child, Bobby Christina Brown, who's sadly no longer with us, rest in peace. And they divorced on April the 24th, 2007. Now I think this period in her life was a pretty testing time for her, and I think she was fairly honest with it, especially with the interview that she done with Oprah Winfrey. But again, this video is not talking about the negatives in her life, it's only about the positives, and Whitney Houston was one of the greatest. Now I'm going to talk about, before I end this video, my 5 favorite Whitney Houston songs. So let's go. So let's get straight into it. So this is my top 5. Some people are gonna agree, some people are gonna disagree. But remember, it is all subjective. Let me know your top 5 in the comments. So at number 5, So Emotional. And no, that's not me being so emotional. That's the song So Emotional. Very, very good song. Number 5. Just about, actually, I did have another one I was umming and ahhing with, but I've gone with this one. So okay, at number 4, I Wanna Dance With Somebody. Very, very good song. Had to be in the top 5. I'm sure most people probably got this in their top 5, or certainly in their top 10. Now, number 3, a song that I really like, Saving All My Love For You. I really, really like this song, and this could have been higher, but I think it is number 3. I think there's 2 songs that I prefer to this. Now, number 2, I was going to start singing this, but I thought, no, let me not do that. We've got I Have Nothing. Really, really good song. And my favourite Whitney Houston song of all time is The Greatest Love of All. I know some of you are probably thinking, hold on a second, where is I Will Always Love You? Don't get me wrong, it's a good song, but it's not one of my top 5. Now, at the beginning of this video, I said that I've got a brief story to tell. So I've got a friend, and if you remember, The Greatest Love of All was actually sung, or a version of it was sung by Randy Watson. Now, Randy Watson obviously was the character that Eddie Murphy played in Coming to America. Now, I had a friend who didn't actually know that that song was a real song sung by Whitney Houston. So he believed that that song was actually created for Coming to America, probably by Eddie Murphy. So when, I don't know how we came onto the subject, but I explained to him the actual song was done by Whitney Houston. It's a real song, and I think I played it for him, or I showed him, and yeah, it was a light bulb moment. But there you go, that's my story, short and sweet. So guys, that's the end of my video, my tribute to Whitney Houston. Rest in peace to Whitney Houston. Can't believe it's been 13 years since her passing. It actually feels like only yesterday, or it seems like only yesterday. I remember it well. Guys, if you like any of this content that I do, if you could do me a favor, like I said at the beginning of this video, please press that like button, press that subscribe button, and please feel free to comment. I really want to know what is your top 5 Whitney Houston songs. Do you agree with me? Let's agree to disagree. And I will see you on the next episode of The Crazy World We Die In. Take care.